In this video, I'm going to share with you the safest and most effective ways to stretch without hurting yourself or overstretching. How's it going, guys? This is Chris back with another episode of Working Body Wednesdays. Working Body Wednesdays is where we talk about posture, functional movement, and hardening your body so it's better able to handle the demands of daily life. If that sounds like something that's interesting to you, be sure to subscribe and hit the little bell so you never miss another video again. On Monday's video, I used a notepad to help me keep my thoughts organized, so I'm going to try that again and see how that goes today for this video. And by the way, if you haven't watched my Why You Shouldn't Bounce While Stretching and What to Do Instead, I encourage you to watch that video before watching this video because it explores a little bit of the physiology and the neurology, so understanding how your nervous system is going to respond to stretching, and it'll give you a little more background on how you can get more out of your stretching routine. Now, I think one of the first things that's critical when you're looking at stretching and you're thinking about stretching is to determine if a muscle is really tight, because sometimes our body can be deceiving. It feels like we need to stretch something when in fact it may be strained. Maybe you had an injury, and what your body is trying to do, remember this, guys, from the previous video that I was just talking about, that your nervous system is king. So before you go stretching the heck out of a muscle, whether it's your piriformis or hamstrings, find out from a professional if there is a reason why that muscle may be tight. Here's a perfect example for you. Sometimes your hamstrings are tight because they're protecting you from a herniated disc in your low back. And if you go and stretch the heck out of those things, then you just took away the one thing that's stabilizing your low back. And your nervous system usually won't even allow you to do that in the first place. I bring this up because it's very important to understand that, which is when I see people stretching, they're either not stretching the right thing or they're overstretching. They're trying to stretch something as hard as you can. And remember, as I talked about in other videos, your body has stretch receptors at the ends of the muscles and where it comes into the bone. So if you're trying to stretch really hard, then what's going to happen is your body's going to respond by trying to protect that. And it's going to tighten up even more. So you'll be counterproductive in your stretching. So if you're thinking about how to determine the intensity of a stretch, I like to use the 10 scale. So 0 being no feeling of stretch at all, 10 being like you feel like the muscle's going to rip off your bone. I think a comfortable moderate stretch around 4 to 5 is where I like to see most of my clients. And that's what I do in my own personal stretching. I like to be somewhere in the middle, where you're feeling that nice moderate stretch, but you're not trying too hard. In stretching, some of these principles that I'm talking about right now, stretching should never be something that's forced. So a big mistake that I see people do is, let's say they're doing a figure 4 stretch where you cross your leg over your other leg and you have it up. And then I see people pushing down on their knee to try and accentuate that kind of stretch. But that doesn't make sense. And in fact, I've seen people tear their meniscus and have all kinds of nasty hip injuries. So never push your body into a range that it doesn't want to go. Instead, come up to the barrier and back off. Come up to the barrier, and the barrier being like the end of your stretch range, and then back off. And keep doing that over and over a longer period of time, and you will get better results. Now, to go along with that, there are different types of stretching, right? So you have active stretching, which is coming in and out of a movement for short periods of time, short duration holds. There's passive stretching too, where you're just holding a stretch for a long period of time. And then there's variations of those. There could be like an active dynamic where you're coming in and out of a lunge, coming in and out of a lunge. A lot of people do that as a warm-up before they're doing exercise, which is a great idea, by the way. You're doing something that's functional. You're doing something that's going to prepare you for a movement that you're actually going to do. Now, as a clinician, the majority of the time I prefer active stretching over passive stretching, and I want to tell you why. Active stretching is soothing to the nervous system for most people. If you're not overdoing it, then you can come in and out of that barrier and you can get more results out of it. Whereas passive stretching, you're relying totally either on torque, like you're trying to pull something, or you haven't warmed up your body enough for your body to receive that stretch. So an active stretch where you're doing a short hold, let's say you're doing a seated hamstring stretch where you have your legs straight out in front of you and you're hinging forward. I would prefer that over taking a loop and putting it around your foot and pulling it in, because you can naturally create a more gentle torque when you're hinging forward instead of pulling the leg to you. You can use your body weight in that case. I've done a video on improving your piriformis and hamstring stretch, so you can see a little more about what I mean if you check out some of my other videos on Working Body Wednesdays, on some of the older ones. I do find that people get better results, and this makes sense physiologically, if you are stretching after you've had some deep tissue work. So whether that's myofascial release or a deep tissue massage or working on your foam roller, it's better to do these things it's better to stretch after you've had activity and you've had blood flow to the muscles and to the tissues, because they'll be more receptive to stretch. From a philosophy standpoint and a physiology standpoint, I do not believe that stretching by itself makes long-term range of motion changes. And the research is mixed about whether it does or not. But using stretching as part of your overall mobility routine, so you can do joint mobilizations using bands, you can start with an active dynamic workout or active dynamic stretching, and then you can move into your regular activity, whether you're going on the treadmill or you're getting on an arc trainer or something like that. That will allow you to use the movement itself to produce more range of motion. I will say that people get great results with things like myofascial release, combining stretching with like Graston technique, where if you guys have ever had that done, if you've ever had physical therapy, or sometimes chiropractors do it too, or other body workers where you'll have a metal tool and they're able to scrape some of the tissue to break apart some of the little connective tissue adhesions. And it makes a huge difference in your range of motion. It's incredible, some of the results you can get from that. I do think that, going back to the point of torque, it's critical that you're able to keep other muscles quiet when you're stretching. So again, let's go back to the example of the hamstring stretch where you're lying on your back and you've got a big long cord and you're trying to pull your leg up. Well, look at all the other muscles I'm having to use to do that. I'm having to recruit a great deal of shoulder muscles and some muscles in my back to pull my leg up. So I'm not going to get as good a result as if I were seated and I had my legs straight out in front of me and I just hinge forward. Because then I can still get a great hamstring stretch without having to stress other parts of my body. I do think once you've identified some of the tissues that are truly tight, and you've stretched and you've mobilized, then you can start to bring those into something bigger like yoga or another practice where you're focusing on not just moving the tissues, but you're focusing on working with the bones. So yoga is a great way to think about that when you're thinking about coming in and out of warrior postures and opening the hips and opening the chest. That involves thinking about chains. So you're stretching out and you're not just stretching just your biceps or just your chest. You're thinking about stretching out and elongating all those tissues along the entire chain. And by doing that, it becomes more functional. Because stretching by itself, no muscle by itself it's very rare that you use a muscle in isolation. So it's great to start out to find some of those muscles that are truly tight, and you can do that by being assessed by someone who's trained, whether it's a physiatrist or a physical therapist or a personal trainer, somebody who's had good background in assessment skills and looked at how stretching is going to work into your overall routine. So to summarize, guys, I prefer active stretching over passive stretching the majority of the time. It is important not to overstretch. You want to listen to your body. You don't want to have a stretch that's looking more like the 8 out of 10. You want it to be around a 4 to 5 out of 10 where you're getting that moderate stretch. It's important to keep the other muscles quiet in your body so you're not using everything else and recruiting things, so you can relax some of the muscles in order to stretch the desired muscles. It's important, lastly, to also make stretching part of a bigger overall mobility routine. I've talked about some of that in some of our other Working Body Wednesday videos, but for you in particular, it is important to be assessed for your individual case. You want to be assessed by someone that's going to look at you as a whole person and consider the things that you need to do from a recreational standpoint or from a professional standpoint. This has been another episode of Working Body Wednesdays. I'd love to hear in the comments section below, what types of things do you do to improve the range of motion in your body? What sorts of stretches have worked for you? What do you find doesn't work as well? What have you learned over the years? Have you tried some of the things we talked about, like the Graston technique or deep fascial release or deep body work? I'd love to hear in the comment section below what's worked for you. So go ahead and share with everybody so we can all learn together. I try to post every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, so be sure to check back next Wednesday. I look forward to seeing you guys next Wednesday. Thanks so much for stopping by.